When we bought a vacation home, my mother-in-law declared, since I'm the matriarch, I'd get to use it first for free. My husband gave her a look, then said something that made her nearly faint so this story has been brewing for a while. I didn't plan on sharing it because I'm not one for drama, but when you deal with someone who treats your life like it's a theater stage, you either walk off or become the lead. I chose the latter. This happened last year. My husband and I live in Santa Clarita, California. Quiet, suburban and predictable, which is exactly how we like it. After saving for almost a decade, we finally bought a small vacation home in Big Bear Lake. It was a big deal for us. Nothing fancy, but it had a fireplace, a dock view, and most importantly, peace. We didn't buy it for Instagram. We bought it for privacy, for the future, for some quiet weekends with wine and wood smoke. Now before I go any further, I need to introduce you to my mother-in-law, Susan. Susan has always had a weird relationship with control, not money, control. She doesn't care what something costs as long as she's the one calling the shots. She doesn't scream, she doesn't throw plates, she uses words like scalpels and her tone like she's reading scripture. That's how she controls people. She makes you feel like going along with her is the righteous, proper adult thing to do. She's not dumb, she's just strategic and manipulative as hell. So one Sunday afternoon we invited Susan and my father-in-law, who, honestly, just stays out of her way, over for lunch. We planned to share the news of the vacation house over lasagna and a bottle of red. She walked in with her usual, "You're lucky I showed up" attitude, complimented the house in a tone that suggested she expected it to be worse, and immediately started talking about how tired she was from managing everything. We told her about the house near the end of the meal. At first she said nothing, just blinked. Then she tilted her head and said, "Oh, well, obviously I'll be using it first. I could use the break." I left, because I thought she was joking. She wasn't. "Since I'm the matriarch of this family," she added slowly, "it only makes sense I get first use. And of course, I assume family doesn't pay." My husband's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. I looked at him. He looked at her. Then he put his fork down quietly. What he said next changed everything. "You don't get to claim a title you've never earned." Susan blinked again. Like a glitch in the Matrix. You could see it in her face. She did not expect him to push back. He wasn't loud, just steady, focused. "You're not the matriarch. You're not the head of anything. You've spent your whole life manipulating people into orbiting you. That's not leadership, that's control through guilt." She went pale, not red, pale, like someone pulled the floor out from under her ego and it hadn't hit bottom yet. "We bought that house for us, not for you, not for your bridge group, not for your half-cousin visiting from wherever. And if you ever try to guilt-trip my wife or act like anything we own is automatically yours, we'll change the locks on both houses." I was stunned, not because I didn't want him to say it, but because I'd waited almost 7 years to hear him say it. Susan stood up. No shouting, no crying. She just looked like someone who had never been challenged by her own son and suddenly realized the leash she'd used on everyone else had been cut clean. She left without saying a word. Her husband followed. I'm pretty sure he gave my husband a tiny nod before closing the door behind him. But of course, it didn't end there. A few days later I started getting texts from my husband's sister Melanie, asking if we could at least let Mom use the place for Mother's Day weekend. Then came the cousins. Then came the Facebook post where Susan wrote a thinly veiled paragraph about how children today forget who wiped their noses and kept the lights on during their childhood. She tagged my husband. Oh yes, she did. We didn't respond. We were quiet for weeks. And then, out of nowhere, Susan's church friend, whom I had met once at a wedding, called me and asked if the vacation house was available for a small prayer retreat. "I'm not religious, but I'm also not cruel," I asked when they wanted it. "This weekend," she said cheerfully. "Susan said you offered it to her anytime, and she thought this would be perfect." I could almost feel my jaw unhinge like a cartoon character, so that's when I knew she hadn't learned a damn thing. She wasn't embarrassed. She wasn't humbled. She was regrouping. I told the church lady the house was already booked, then I blocked the number, and that's when the plan for revenge clicked into place. We weren't just going to keep her out of the house. We were going to show her just how little control she actually had. The housewarming from hell. We decided to host a quiet housewarming at the cabin 2 weeks later. Just a few friends, no social media posts, no pictures, not even a family invite. But somehow on Saturday morning, right before guests arrived, my phone buzzed. It was a photo from an unknown number. It was a picture of our front porch in Big Bear. Someone had left a gift basket with a satin ribbon that said, "Welcome Matriarch." Inside was a bottle of cheap wine, 2 packets of hot chocolate, and a printed schedule. Susan's self-care weekend Friday, meditation and wine by the fireplace Saturday, brunch and light music Sunday, devotional walk by the lake, then journaling. The gall. The pure nerve. I looked at my husband, showed him the picture. He laughed. I didn't, because the more I thought about it, the more something started to click. Something wasn't right. Susan had never been to the cabin, so how did she know the address? We had never posted it, never shared it, not even with extended family. So I checked the paperwork and that's when I found it. My sister-in-law Melanie was listed as the notary on the title paperwork. She was there the day we signed. She'd offered to help since she was already a notary and could speed things up. At the time I thought nothing of it. Turns out she'd made a copy of the deed. The original deed. I found the email trail. She'd sent it to Susan the same day we closed. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just overstepping. This was a coordinated move. And if they were already crossing that line, who knew what else they were capable of? Turning the screws, I confronted Melanie first. Called her. She picked up on the second ring like she was expecting me. "Oh hey," she said, chipper. "Did Mom get the basket? Wasn't that cute?" I stayed quiet. I figured it's all in the family, right? I thought it'd be a sweet surprise. "How did she get the address?" "What do you mean, did you send her a copy of the deed?" Silence. Then the sound of her sigh, long and annoyed. "Okay. Can you not make this a federal crime?" She just wanted to see the house layout. She was excited. It's not like she's trying to steal it. She is not welcome there. You can't seriously be this petty. She's our mother. I hung up. No screaming, no threats. I just ended the call and started making real plans. That night, I got on my laptop. I booked the cabin solid for 3 straight months. Friends, co-workers, even strangers from my husband's office who wanted a weekend getaway. I made everyone sign rental agreements for $1 just to have the paper trail. Then I paid for a smart security system with live camera feeds and alerts for movement. We weren't going to be caught off guard again. The break in it was early March. Snow was still thick up in Big Bear. I was at home in Santa Clarita watching the camera feeds on my phone out of habit while drinking my morning coffee. And there she was, Susan, in a big beige coat, sunglasses, dragging a leopard print suitcase behind her. She walked up to the front door, paused, looked around and pulled a key out of her purse. I watched her unlock the door and walk inside our house. Not a flinch, not a second thought, like she owned the place. I almost threw up. I called the police. Didn't even blink. I told them a stranger had entered my home and was trespassing. Gave them the camera footage, showed them the deed and stayed calm. They went up there. She was inside, sipping wine, in a robe, our robe. They asked her who owned the house. She told them it was a family property. They showed her the paperwork. They told her to leave. She refused. So they escorted her out. She cried. Of course. She clutched her pearls and said she was being removed from her family's legacy and how she couldn't believe her son would do this to her. They didn't care. They don't arrest people like her, but they do warn them. And they did. She was banned from the property formally. That night she called my husband 17 times in a row. He didn't answer a single one. The real damage, you'd think that would have ended it, but nope. Now she was hurt, publicly hurt. And that meant one thing. She needed to rebuild her image fast. So she started telling people, family, friends, church members, that we were unstable, that I had driven a wedge between her and her son, that the house was actually bought with money she loaned us, a lie, and we'd tricked her out of her share. She went to war. And the worst part? Some people believed her. A few cousins stopped talking to us. My husband's aunt, who used to send birthday cards every year, ghosted us completely. My husband's workplace even got a weird voicemail from a blocked number claiming he was being investigated for financial misconduct. The harassment was coordinated, subtle, and constant. We started losing sleep. We stopped going to family functions. But she made one mistake. She messed with the wrong friend. One of my close friends, let's call her Danielle, works in title insurance. She's been in the game for 15 years and knows how to sniff out fraud like a bloodhound. I asked her to look into our closing paperwork quietly. 2 days later she called me. "You need to sit down." I did. "Your notary didn't just make a copy of your deed. She filed an unofficial amendment. It was rejected by the county, but it was still submitted, trying to list your mother-in-law as a secondary beneficiary." I felt cold. That's not just bold, that's fraudulent. We had the email, we had the video, now we had a paper trail and I wasn't going to sit on it. The secret bank account after the fraud attempt on the title, I started digging through every shred of paperwork we had. Receipts, notary records, emails, even old text messages. Something in my gut told me we hadn't seen the full picture yet. Then I found it. Buried in our financial inbox was an old bank alert from a regional credit union in San Bernardino. It was from back when we were finalizing the cabin purchase. I didn't recognize the account number, but it was under both my husband's name and his mother's. I stared at it for a full minute. Why the hell would my husband share a bank account with his mother? I didn't say anything right away. I just forwarded it to my friend Danielle and asked her to trace the account history. She called me back the next morning, her voice low and serious. "That account was opened 4 months before you bought the cabin." "Okay. And it was used to transfer $15, $0 twice. Once in his name, once in hers." "What?" She set it up, and she used your husband's information. I mean, full info, SSN, ID number, all of it. If he didn't sign off, this is straight up identity theft. My hands were shaking. I confronted my husband that night. He looked confused at first, genuinely, then angry. He had no idea the account even existed. He called the credit union. They verified the account. But the voice on the recordings? Susan. She'd faked his authorization. She literally used his name and info to shuffle money through an account she controlled. Probably to create some kind of paper trail to argue later that she helped buy the cabin. This wasn't just manipulation anymore. This was criminal. And the worst part? The money she moved was from a trust account left by my husband's grandmother. One he'd never touched because it was supposed to be for our future kids. That was the line. That was the moment I knew. She wouldn't stop unless she lost everything. The lawyer and the paper cut, we hired a lawyer. A mean one. The kind with dead eyes and a billing rate that made me want to vomit. But he was exactly what we needed. He drafted a formal cease and desist, complete with the demand for restitution and documentation of the forged bank activity. We also added a notarized affidavit from the credit union confirming Susan had impersonated her son to authorize the transactions. Then came the title fraud documents. And the kicker? The police report we filed for trespassing and unauthorized entry backed by live camera footage. We weren't just making noise anymore. We were building a wall. We didn't send it to Susan. We sent it to her church, her pastor, and the real estate board her daughter Melanie belonged to. And then we waited. It took exactly 3 days for the cracks to show. Susan tried to call us again, but this time it was less crying and more shrieking. Left a voicemail that started out begging and ended with her yelling, "How dare you turn this family into a lawsuit?" My husband didn't say a word, just listened, then deleted it. A week later, Melanie's real estate license was flagged for review. Her firm suspended her pending investigation. She called me crying, saying she didn't know it would go this far. I told her we didn't either, but here we were. The family fallout, that's when the family started collapsing in on itself. Melanie flipped fast. I mean flipped hard. She started forwarding us texts between her and Susan, stuff that made my skin crawl. "Just print the new deed, she won't notice. Don't worry, once we're in, we're in. Your brother is weak. She's the one wearing the pants anyway." Susan wasn't just toxic, she was strategic, like a slow-moving virus that infected people over time. But Melanie wasn't loyal, she was scared. She offered to write a full statement saying she helped her mother manipulate the paperwork under pressure. We gave that to the lawyer too. Locked and loaded. Meanwhile, Susan doubled down, hosting little support groups at her house, spinning stories about how we'd stolen family money, how we were trying to erase her from the family tree. She printed fake family trees. I am not even joking. We found one in a photo someone sent us from Facebook. It had my husband's name, his sister, their cousins, but not me. And instead of wife, next to my husband it said, unknown spouse. I left, then I saved it just in case. The lawyer's trick. Our lawyer had an idea, one I hadn't considered. He suggested sending Susan a settlement offer. At first I was pissed. Why offer her anything? But then he explained, it wasn't real. It was bait. If she accepts the terms, she's admitting she did everything you're accusing her of. And we can void it later under duress if needed, but it gives us leverage. We drafted it with specific terms. Admit to fraud on the title. Admit to identity theft with the bank account. Pay in damages. Stay 500 feet away from the property permanently. No contact with us or our future children. Formal apology in writing, copied to her church. We mailed it certified. She signed it. She actually signed it. No lawyer, no red lines, just a sloppy signature and a note that said, "I'm doing this to keep peace, but I still don't believe I did anything wrong." That letter is now framed in our house next to the fireplace right above the lockbox where we keep the original deed. The garden and the guest list things got quiet for a few weeks. No calls, no church posts, no anonymous voicemails. It was suspiciously calm, like the eye of a hurricane. I remembered telling my husband, "She's not done. She's just thinking." And I was right, because she had one last card to play. That card came in the form of a surprise family unity weekend, something she organized behind our backs. She invited the entire extended family up to the cabin, claiming we had offered it for healing and togetherness. She even made an invite. Someone forwarded it to me. It was sent from Melanie's old email, probably to avoid being traced. The flyer said, "Let's reclaim what's ours. Healing, forgiveness, and family at the house built by legacy." I saw red, so we made a decision. We drove up to the cabin the day before the event, parked our car inside the garage, closed the blinds, and waited. The confrontation. They arrived at a.m. on Saturday. Susan, Melanie, 3 aunts, 2 cousins, a neighbor from her church, all dressed like it was some kind of retreat. Picnic baskets, coolers, even folding chairs. I watched from the upstairs hallway, holding a camera, my heart racing. She walked up to the porch and tried the door. Locked. She knocked, then knocked louder. I let her knock for a full minute, then my husband opened the door. His face was calm, his voice wasn't. "This is not your house." She froze. The others behind her stood still. "You forged my name. You stole from a trust account. You submitted fake paperwork. And you lied to everyone here. This ends today." She stepped back like she'd been slapped. "But then, and I'll never forget this," she smiled. "You wouldn't do this in front of your family. You wouldn't humiliate me." And then he said the one thing I think he'd been waiting years to say. "You already did that to yourself." He pulled out a folder. Copies of the bank transactions, the false notary filings, the email with her schedule for matriarch weekend, and her signed apology. He handed it to the oldest aunt there, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Aunt Ruth, who'd always seen through Susan but stayed quiet. Ruth read every page slowly, then turned to Susan. "You told me they cut you out, that they were unstable, that she, pointing at me, was trying to break up the family." Susan said nothing. Melanie started crying. Another cousin stepped forward. "Is this true?" Susan finally broke her silence. "I was just trying to protect our family's legacy. This house should be for everyone, not locked behind their anger." "You stole from your own son, Mom," Melanie snapped. "You dragged me into this. I almost lost my job because I needed someone to help. No one ever helps me." The words exploded out of her. She looked around like a cornered animal, eyes darting, chest rising and falling. The whole illusion unraveling in front of everyone she'd spent decades trying to control. And then, she did the one thing that surprised me. She sat down, right there on the front step. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just went silent. No one spoke for a long time. Then Ruth said, "You've done enough damage. Go home, Susan." They left, all of them, one by one, back to their cars. Quiet, avoiding eye contact. Melanie stayed back for a few minutes. She apologized genuinely. Said she was ashamed. Said she'd never seen their mother unravel like that. Said she was done being her puppet. We didn't say much. We didn't have to. When they were gone, I sat on the porch and watched the snow melt along the edges of the garden. That's when I noticed something. A weird patch of soil darker than the rest. Looser, like it had been disturbed. I grabbed a shovel and started digging. About 2 feet down I hit plastic, a sealed tote bag. Inside were copies of the cabin keys, a laminated guest list with names and dates, and a handwritten note. "Let's build a family again. No matter what she says, we belong here." She, I assume, was me. I showed it to my husband. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then he took the keys and threw them into the lake. We changed the locks again, filed one final police report for attempted unauthorized use and identity theft. The lawyer told us we had more than enough to press charges, but my husband didn't want to. Not because he was afraid, but because he was tired. We cut ties fully, blocked every number, deleted every contact. No more holidays, no more check-ins, nothing. A few family members kept in touch, Ruth included. She sends postcards sometimes, never asks questions. Just simple messages like, "Thinking of you both." The snow is lovely here too. Sometimes I still go through the old emails just to remind myself that I didn't imagine it all. That it really happened. That we really stood up. The betrayal left a scar, deep and strange. Sometimes it hurts when I think about how easily we were almost manipulated into giving up our peace, our money, and our sanity, all in the name of family. But other times I feel relief, because now I know who we are without her, and I finally understand something. Blood doesn't entitle anyone to your life. Especially not someone who only shows up with open hands and sharpened knives. The cabin is quiet now, just the way we wanted it. No flyers, no guests, no ghosts, just silence and the creak of the wood under our feet and the sound of a fireplace we bought with no strings attached. And that's real peace.